Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Nuance Needed podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Sam.
And we are so excited because we have the one and only Kate Kennedy here today.
Author of the incredible New York Times bestseller, One in a Millennial. Honestly, one of my favorite books that I read in 2023 when it was released.
And she is the host of the incredible Be There in 5 podcast. In some ways, I feel like Kate is like the queen of nuance. Like just long form, weaving webs. Very inspired by her.
Very inspired. And this was such an incredible conversation for both of us to have. And I think many times when we were planning this podcast, she was someone that we really looked up to as an inspiration. So this is a huge conversation for us, and we're so excited for you to hear it.
Really quick before we get into it, we have an exciting update about the podcast. So many of you all have been asking for bonus episodes and more content, and we are pumped to be launching a Substack that is going to deliver all of that and more. So you can head over to our Substack now. It is nuanceneeded.substack.com. I'll link it in the show notes. We already have a ton of articles, and what you can expect is bonus episodes once a month. Sam's very famous, very popular pep talks. She's going to be doing those for you twice a month. And then we're going to also be giving you a lot more deep dives into the content we're talking about. So in addition to just giving you kind of an overview of the episode, we're going to go into how we recommend that you really implement what we're talking about into your life. So for our people-pleasing episode, we have journal prompts, we have self-reflection questions, we have homework assignments, we have other complex breakdowns that is all there on Substack. We also have the boundaries episodes up with essentially a whole guide on how we recommend you do boundaries, but you don't weaponize them. As we've said before, and we will probably say again, we know that nuance isn't super popular, but more than ever, we feel like this work is so important, which is why we're really excited to bring you the next level of Nuance Needed, where you can join a community of other listeners who are committed to bringing nuance into their lives and are sick of overly simplistic mental health trends. So join us over on Substack at nuanceneeded.substack.com. As I said before, we already have 6 or 7 pieces of content for you ready to go, and we can't wait to connect with you all more. Kate, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for chatting with Sam and I today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. When's the last time when you came on my show and we talked about TikTok therapy speak? We were ahead of our time with that one, I think.
October 2022, maybe?
Yeah, when I first started being like, do I have object permanence issues, or is it just my algorithm?
Yes.
It's the algorithm.
Well, you could say that is like our entire podcast now, because our podcast is literally called Nuance Needed. It's about breaking down mental health disinformation we see online and helping people feel less crazy, pretty much.
You said something that made me feel less crazy the other day about like how you do owe people something. And I really appreciated that sentiment because sometimes I am a little spooked by the individualism, the fierce individualism that makes us such silos.
Yeah.
Well, the reason she posted that was we just did like a whole episode on this idea of like, you do owe people things.
Yeah.
And we really reflected on it on the lens of like friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that's where we've seen it like with our own clients, and I think just our content consumption, that it really is this, like, people are so afraid of being asked for effort.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's like the big trigger point, is that if someone's asking them to exhibit effort in some way, they're like, I'm being taken advantage of. Like, I'm, like, I don't have enough self-care time to recover from that type of effort,
It's so true. And it like all roads lead back to like, it's nobody's fault, like specific fault why like especially moms and stuff feel so unsupported. And then it makes us like react poorly to one another as if it's more labor because there's such a disproportionate amount of labor. And
Right.
it's just like, yeah, I'm not what this show's about today, but I could just chat about your own content all day. So I guess I should end there.
Well, I'm really interested, Kate, in because, your book is coming out in paperback, which is so exciting. And we loved your book very much.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Thank
so
you.
funny hearing, you and your sister. I listened to the episode, you and your sister talking about the process of it and things like that. And one thing we really wanted to chat with you about is, how do you see millennial friendship being different? Because in this vein of what do we owe each other, Sam and I have been talking a lot about how, friendship has really changed since we were young. And we used to have sleepovers and unstructured playtime where we would just like run around neighborhoods and do weird things. Like, I don't know about you, but I like would mix mud with sticks and like
Right.
do weird stuff like that.
Everyone has some elusive creek they went to.
Yes.
Yeah. The neighborhood water
Yes.
source was where everybody played. Yeah.
So we would love to hear, like, how do you think about how friendships have changed in different generations? Is there something that will be missing maybe in other generations that have more structured playtime and less boredom and freedom?
I think it's an interesting question because my son's very young. He's still like in parallel play mode, like not actively interacting with friends. So it's hard to know how exactly people approach friendships now, given my perception is like, oh my God, it would be so awful with like social media, and like the idea of being left out is so amplified. You used to just hear about it a couple days later. Now living it in real time could be so damaging. And like, there's a lot of like negative things I could say about what I assume happens. I like to think / hope that there are elements of girlhood preserved within and across generations where before you're, because when I think of like the most impactful sleepovers, it was arguably before an age that even now I think you'd be like given a cell phone or primary internet access in some way. And I think what's really beautiful about young friendships, especially in girlhood, is like kind of being on that shared fact finding mission about the world. And it's like bittersweet. It's like sad and beautiful that like you spend a lot of that time dreaming about your future selves, and then you get older and you're like, wait, we were living the dream, being so untethered by any like societal constraints, any like formula of what the right way to be is. And I hope like kids are still doing that in a sense of just like learning from each other and directly interacting and interfacing, because what we didn't have as much of was like you could almost extend parallel play well into your adolescence and never really like interact or talk if you were like cruising the internet, playing online, playing video games, watching TV, watching movies, etc. And to me, the key is like that direct interaction where like you have to figure stuff out together and problem solve together and not just like look stuff up immediately. Like a lot of the magic to me was in kind of that like, surveying people at the mall, surveying older siblings, scrounging through magazines, trying to figure out what stuff meant. Like, I think young girls, especially, like, I know we freaked out last year when kids were buying skincare at Sephora, but I kind of think that's like I don't know. I think the young girls kind of always cosplay older women and stuff. And I think it can be, there's a spectrum, I'm sure, but I think it can be somewhat harmless. I'd rather them be skincare than like tanning beds and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think that like, when I think of the way millennial friendships were different, I actually think it's something that's still attainable today, depending on how early one is exposed to this reflex of, I'm just going to look something up. I'm just going to pay attention to something else. I'm just going to distract myself instead of think and problem solve. And I don't know. I just feel like my memories they have little to do with the 90s or 2000s themselves and more to do with like disconnection and like the effort involved with figuring stuff out together. And that's what made for such good memories.
Like, well, I think the word that's coming to my mind hearing you say that is the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Like there was this simplicity. There wasn't any like expectation or pressure that we were going to have to like, well, we have to take a photo and post it and like, make sure you tag me, but like, don't tag this person, blah, blah, blah. And kind of that disconnection piece of we can just be like fully present. Doesn't matter what we're doing, but we're fully present together.
And I think that like, it also kind of brings up the question of the parents' involvement too, because one thing I have noticed about my friends with kids, more the age we're talking about, is like they do so many activities. And like my parent, they just didn't like chauffeur us around. Like we weren't like doing that much. We kind of had to make a lot of our own fun.
Mhm.
And I kind of wonder if like the digital social media piece has more to do with how it affects the parents, seeing what other parents are doing, and it being a yardstick for, am I good enough parent? Should they be doing soccer and dance and tennis and football? And like, I wonder if, like, I don't know this answer. Like, are kids like hanging out and biking down the street and going to the creek, or are they going to like organized activities all the
Yeah.
time? Because I don't feel like I really did that till middle school, high school, when there was like teams and stuff. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think you talking about this makes me feel better because as a parent also, I worry a lot that we're losing, this sort of free structured play. I read right, The Anxious Generation, which I have positive thoughts towards, and I think I think it puts a lot of pressure on parents too.
Mm.
But yeah, like even Sam and I were talking before you jumped on, and there's this trend on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen it, of parents being like, I will never let my child go to a sleepover. Have you seen that?
Mm. Yes, I've gathered from my own audience that people aren't doing sleepovers anymore.
And that like is so heartbreaking to me. Like as a kid who struggled with friendships, who felt like distant from people, sometimes I moved a lot growing up. Like going to a sleepover was some of like the most important memories. It was how you learned the difference between your family versus other families. It was like freedom and exploration, and I get the concern and the fear. But yeah, I wonder sometimes if we are overcorrecting with activities and no freedom and no sleepovers.
No sleepovers is so tough because it's almost like I feel like, honestly, having a take as a mom
Yeah.
is hard. Like because anything I say, could be problematic because I'm not at that life phase yet.
Same.
But yeah, it is tough. It's almost like we know too much and we can hear about the worst case scenario of things, and a lot of people have experienced the worst case scenario. It's like, yeah, how do we correct for the worst case scenarios that we know are possible without over correcting and missing out on the benefits from that circumstance? And like, I don't know the answer to that. But it's like, if no one else is doing sleepovers, you're not going to be the creepy parent, like trying to like lure the kids over.
Like, no, we do sleepovers in this house. Like, yeah.
But I actually don't know if that's like so parents that public face on social media, or if that's like real.
Yeah.
I actually think that that does still happen to a degree with like friends I know in like shared, understood, safe spaces. I think the difference now would maybe be like an insistence on having a better, like knowing the parents better, knowing, understanding their home, understanding who's there. And also just like, I think fortunately, we're in an era of parenting that's much more transparent with kids. And, that we don't keep secrets, what is and isn't it, you know what I mean? So like, I like to think you could toe the balance between transparency with your kid to keep them safe and honest, and a level of camaraderie with fellow parents that you could trust people in their homes. Like otherwise, I think that what kills me, I'm like, otherwise, what are we doing in this life? Like we can't trust like neighbors and friends to have a safe space for our children. Like, I don't know. It bums me out if I think about it too much, but also I don't know if when my kid's that age, maybe I'll be so spooked I won't want it either.
Yeah.
It's so difficult because and this is something that like Amanda and I run into on our podcast, right? Is because we're trying to like, we're like, everybody's story is valid and real. And like, everything matters. But also I think people, and I think this ties back into kind of like the friendship social media question as well, is there's so much comparison, and there's now like the basic experience of girlhood is like self-doubt at a base level, right? Like there's so many insecurities and struggles, and kind of like what you were alluding to earlier of this idea of like part of what made our girlhood so fun was figuring all of that out together and feeling like we were all equally in the dark. Unless someone had like some mystical, magical older sibling,
the older
that could, like,
sibling,
tell us all their secrets.
Yes, exactly.
I think now, fast forward to today, where we have access to everything all the time, constantly, and those worst stories and the horror stories and everything going wrong and what we wish we would have done differently when this happened posts. And I think people are forgetting that someone else's situation is not a guarantee that will be yours.
Mm-hmm.
And that for you to decide what is best for your child and your family doesn't have to be what's best for the other one, and vice versa. And I think that takes kind of a level of confidence that a lot of people are intimidated to have, because social media introduces so much groupthink, and that we're supposed to see this hot take and everybody be like, I hadn't thought of it before. Like, I have to immediately apply that to my life. And it's just so much pressure in so many directions that to just hang out or like have your kids hang out together on the couch and be like, I don't care what you do, just be bored. That feels like you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm putting myself in this circumstance of like, okay, my kid's older. He has a friend come over. What am I doing? And it's like, it is interesting to think about just the role of like millennials in our own self-surveillance and how we project that onto our kids and what they do and how other people perceive it. Because yeah, it's like my mom, like I'd get dropped off at kids' houses and what we did or not, like wasn't a reflection on their parents.
Right.
It was just like, what'd you do? But now if thinking about some people, like kids coming over to my house and then being like bored, I'm like, oh, am I a bad mom? Am I not? Like, it's just like, it's almost the instinct to insert yourself is interesting when I think the theme across the board is just like considerably less freedom and more oversight, despite being in what we would normally label a safe space. You know what I mean? It's like we just, there was always boundaries staying within the confines of a block or a neighborhood or someone's house or, in your house or whatever. But like, yeah, I actually could see myself kind of be like, what are you doing? Are you being nice? Do you like... And then I have like, so I sometimes I lay awake at night and think about like, what will I do if my kid gets bullied? Like,
Oh my God.
How not to like chest puff and lose my mind and let things take their course. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we have like an insistence on inserting ourselves or controlling their situation too much when I feel like there's so many things where my parents, despite being fairly strict, they didn't interfere with a lot of our interpersonal things with our peers. And I can see myself having that desire.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter goes to daycare and she a couple months ago had like her first fight at daycare.
Oh no.
Like she's like 2, like not even. And like she and another girl, like, I don't know, one pushed.
What was it about?
I don't even know. One pushed another. Like they're like, it was a couple months ago. They're like basically not like they're not super verbal, so we don't even know.
Right.
Probably about a toy that one of them wanted.
It's like on next door.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just so interesting I can see myself when she's young being able to brush it off and stuff like that. But I think as she grows up and if she has experiences that mirror my own, I think that will be extremely triggering for me. And it will be hard if she's left out or if she's excluded or if people bully her or things like that. I can absolutely see how my own stuff will get triggered and I will have to not interfere as much as I want because it feels like it's happening to you.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think about this a lot, like especially if I have a girl at some point, like being mindful of how like people talk about their bodies and food and being bad or good or whatever. It's like, I think anything you went through, you want to overcorrect for, but like it is kind of, you can't really like demand everybody else in the world do that and shield them from being exposed to things. I think that like what's so interesting is whenever like I've gone online and like brought up that like I don't know how to react to certain situations or I don't read a lot of parenting books, which one should I read or like whatever, because of like the self-surveillance of wanting to be a good mom. It is interesting how most people say don't read parenting books, go back to therapy. Yeah. Like the better thing you can do is like get to know yourself better, work through your own trauma, your own childhood issues, and like do what you can to not like project and perpetuate like those cycles onto your kids, which I think is always a really interesting and refreshing answer. But I can also see how it's human nature to a degree, and we don't need to like aggressively police ourselves for being sensitive to stuff we experienced, you know?
I also think there's an element of like to just put ourselves back in like our younger shoes.
Yeah.
And how it felt, like the different responses to when we quote unquote failed or made a mistake, right? Like what was it that would have felt the most helpful and like empowering to us as kids in terms of responding to something that went wrong or something that we screwed up on or like whatever. I'm sure like all three of us and anybody listening to this can think of responses that their parents had that were really great and responses that were really horrible. And there's kind of this obsession with like avoiding your child experiencing failure or like helping your child to avoid that. And it's why as kids get older, adults are now like, why is my child so anxious? I don't understand why they're so anxious. And it's like, well, you've never let them experience a negative feeling. Like every time it comes up, you immediately try to comfort them or you immediately try to fix it because you yourself can't figure out how to tolerate that discomfort. Now, obviously, like there's a spectrum to this, right? Like, you know your child, and I'm not sitting here saying like we just let kids like weep and cry and be miserable and, you know, flail. That's not it. But I think, you know, the proverbial wicked marketing scheme of holding space, there is, as funny as that is and as jokey as it can be, that is a legitimate experience. And the whole point of holding space is that you figure out how to tolerate your discomfort while witnessing someone else's discomfort.
Yeah.
And the assumption has now been, at least what I've seen in parenting, I don't have kids, so I should maybe just shut up and back out right now. But I've worked with enough people in my career and have been around enough situations that I think I have a pretty good gauge of this constant obsession with avoiding any and all pain, whatever that is really detrimental to kids. And it causes them to shut down and isolate because everything feels scary and everything feels intimidating. And just add some of those cultural things in with social media combined, and you kind of have like this recipe for exactly where we're at with kids feeling like they're not hanging out with people and they're not spending time with people and they're just in their room on their phones or whatever. And so now it's this extreme response of like, well, now it's no screen time and my kids will never do this and they'll never do that. And it's like, well, all you're doing is like perpetuating black and white thinking.
Right.
And catastrophizing. And now everybody's anxious and we're right back to where we started.
Right.
And that loop. I don't know if that made sense, but
no, it absolutely does. I think that one of the things that has been on my algorithm lately that's helpful is people talking about how like your job as a parent isn't to help your kid avoid discomfort, but to build resilience. And I think about that all the time because you hit the nail on the head. It's sometimes the hardest part is like overcoming my own discomfort, despite knowing that they'll get through stuff. And it feels easier to mitigate their state of being just because, again, I as a parent can feel really overwhelmed. And sometimes selfishly, I'm like,
I don't want to deal with this.
Doing things so I don't have to deal. Like I don't have time. I don't have the bandwidth.
Right.
And I do think the concept of resilience is like so important to keep in mind because when I was writing One in a Millennial, one thing that I was trying to point out is like I didn't have a traumatic childhood. Like I actually had a really supportive, positive household. And the point was kind of like, despite that, this is how much of a product of my environment I am. And to almost be like you can't help a lot of environmental and cultural forces impacting something.
No.
Your kid is going to be a product of their time.
Yeah.
And when I look back on like the things that actually mattered, it's like all of the things I was held to in the outside world that I fell short of, the most important thing was not being held to those things at home. My parents never like thought it was interesting if I had a boyfriend. They never overvalued my looks, my weight, my like when I could like get C's across the board, but in my house I felt like a genius because like my poetry was amazing. Like I was so good at drawing things, birthday cards, and like they made me. I think the way I like survived was that they made me feel competent and confident in all of the areas that like school and society didn't really validate. Yeah. And in parenting, I try to think about that a lot too, in terms of like, okay, how, when my kid walks through the door, can I correct for that and provide as safe of a space as possible? And I think that's what I've been trying to think through is like, letting go to a degree and not controlling everything they do outside of the house. But like, even in writing my book, it kind of reminded me like a lot of this stuff is like a rite of passage and stuff you just have to like go through. And when I was reviewing it in hindsight, it wasn't like, oh, I would change everything. I actually wouldn't change a lot. I just can understand it and contextualize it better. And that's why the whole premise was kind of like be kind and rewind, like go easy on yourself. We're a product of our time. Like we had stuff to figure out. And I do think millennials are worth contextualizing for having a certain subset of difficult things with our timing. But like, I think a lot of it's just childhood. It's like a clunky process where you have the most ambition, but absolutely no freedoms. And it's like kind of rough being a kid.
Yeah.
And I think you proved this like so eloquently throughout the book, right? Which is this idea of like your parents created this incredible space that I think a lot of parents are aiming to achieve, right? Kind of this idea of we just love you, we're proud of you, we support you. It's endless, it's unconditional, right? All this stuff. And life still happened to you. Right. And you still got swept up in Christianity. And like
Sam is ex-Mormon, so I feel like you guys really need to talk about that.
My parents couldn't save me from. Isn't that the joke? That was kind of like the irony. I was like, of all places that parents think it's okay to send your kids, I think youth group was the most traumatizing. And that is the place that you would put your head down on the pillow, being like, "Oh, my kids at a church lock-in, they're fine."
Yeah. And it's like the most emotionally repressive, abusive space they could be in.
Yeah. I'm like, be scared of that stuff more so than like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I kind of going off of that too, I was raised in the Mormon church, and that is like a whole thing that I could probably have an entire podcast on that just like by itself. But
you should. That's an interesting topic.
Nuance needed ex-Mormons. Yeah. The thing that I just appreciated so much is my dad was like, I don't care what you're exposed to in the world or what you see or what you hear about. You can always come home and talk to me about it. Right. Yeah. Or like my mom was the same way, kind of this idea of you can communicate about anything and you're allowed to figure out your own belief systems. It's exactly what you said earlier about this idea of like, you're creating a space for your kid to feel like they are safe to explore who they are.
Yes.
And to make mistakes within that and to sometimes be bullied or sometimes they are the bully. So yeah, I don't know, kind of there is just so much pressure to get it right.
Yep.
Right? Like you have to get it right every step, every time, every issue. And that if you do get it wrong, you weren't this enough. You didn't do enough research, didn't think about it long enough. You didn't take enough time. You didn't do it fast enough. You were too mean. You were too nice. Like there's no room to say, okay, we did it that way. It didn't work. How would I like to do it differently next time? Like,
right. When we talk about stories of like success or really great people or charitable or impactful people or whatever, like, are we ever talking about if they were like breast or formula fed? Are we ever talking about like how they were exposed to screen time? Like, I understand that the science and the data is valid, but I also understand that like there are a lot of things that define who you are, and the marketing mix model and teasing out those individual variables from someone's ultimate like success as a human is like near impossible. So I'm almost more interested in like how these individual decisions look long term than like obsessing over them in real time, because like my entire book, like I call myself a 90s version of an iPad kid, but I like learned a lot from it. Like my argument is like, I don't think screen time and moderation is like that bad. I actually think that like for a curious person, it like kept my mind pretty open. Like I was watching The Real World and I was like, Mom, Ruthie has something called alcoholism. Like you should be a little bit more sensitive. Like I didn't have exposure to that in my real life. Like I don't know. I feel like I learned stuff and it expanded my empathy in a way too. So I don't know. It's I feel two ways. I have like my higher self that feels philosophical about the things I believe in, like resilience and the long term over the day to day and like, you know, going easy on myself. But like, did I just also go to my 18-month-old's appointment and leave the room when he was like getting his ears checked because I don't like when he cries? Like, yeah.
I love I think one of my favorite chapters in the book is about popular girl handwriting and, you know, how there was a specific aesthetic of the millennial popular girl. And it made me think about, you know, your book became a New York Times bestseller, which is incredible. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel popular now? Like, is there a dissonance between who you became sort of, right? Like now you have this platform, like your podcast is successful. You have this book that did what, right, everyone wants to do with their book. What is it like on the other side? Do you feel like it changed you? Maybe this is a weird question, but I think about this all the time with people.
I think it's like you learn at a young age. You like have these goals and these things in mind. You want like this kind of, title of a bestseller or whatever, and you think it'll like change your entire life. And then what do you ultimately realize?
Yeah,
nothing
like the exact nothing meaningfully changes.
Yeah,
doesn't mean it's not cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I didn't want it. But what's funny is like I actually think the reason that high school popularity feels so aspirational and satisfying is because it is a finite denominator of people to be popular against. Whereas popularity in adult life, there is always something bigger, something better to compare yourself to be relative to. And that's what I think is kind of interesting about the fleeting glory of the high school popular girl and the ephemeral limelight she's under for 40 years. It's like, no, this is probably pretty damn fun and pretty special. And you're going to learn the hard way that you're not going to be sustainably popular in life.
Yeah.
I actually had a really interesting experience kind of like processing the irony of this book kind of being about like a normal existence, like enough exceptional people write books. This is kind of like, what about the normals? Like, what about, this isn't like an exceptional existence. It's kind of like the minutia of just like a millennial girlhood in my experience. And the part about I think I call myself popular adjacent or something like that, where it's like, I always felt like I was in middle management. Like I could get close-ish to like, popularity and power, but like never the next level. And I feel like that kind of happened with the way my book performed because I hired a PR agency and it did great and bestseller. And like, I'm so proud of it. But also with the exception of 2 places, we got like hundreds of emails being like, oh, sounds really interesting, but we're not interested. Like
Really?
kind of the feedback kind of being along the lines of, oh, interesting topic, but like, I'm not an it girl. Like I'm kind of not like a well-known person that would be worth doing a lot of media and press about. So it was a really interesting experience as an author, kind of having the optics of this successful book, while behind the scenes, most of our efforts to promote it were 95% rejection.
Yeah. That is so fascinating to me because I think it goes back to this idea of like, why would you not want to take advantage of that experience? Your book was so relatable to me. It felt like I was watching my adolescence play out. And to have that like ignored and dismissed by so many people, of like the frustration of like girlhood and womanhood being seen as boring and seen as basic and not something to be celebrated. And it's something that we should just like suffer through and shut up about. And it's not glamorous or glorious. So like, why are you expecting us to highlight it? It makes me so sad. And I'm so glad that your book ended up doing as well as it did. But then like, why can't that be celebrated?
And it's funny. I don't know if I've ever like even admitted that before because it sounds so like negative and glass half empty, because it's like 2 things can be true. Like this book kind of succeeded far beyond my like wildest dreams, but the experience of trying to make it as big as possible and promoting it was like so deflating. But you're not supposed to say that as a person promoting a product. I don't know. Like I always wanted to kind of be more honest about the process, but it was kind of the craziest experience to write about this coming of age story and like accepting all of the things I once chased and like coming into my own and being like a more confident woman now, only to have like this project be the thing that kind of compromised my confidence a bit.
That's so interesting.
So that's exactly why you brought up this idea of like middle management. Like you were celebrated to a point.
I appreciate that you are holding on to the middle management comment, because I thought that was a great way to put it too, but I think that got cut. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wish I could find things. I'm looking for the exact line of my. Oh yeah. When I think about my social status moving through most of junior high and high school, the best way I can describe it is that it was like being in middle management. I was deep in the system of participating in what was required of me to be considered popular in my reference group. And I felt like my spot in the middle was both a reward for my loyalty and a subversion due to my desperation. I always felt good enough but not great, painfully aware of my average nature and afraid that my nominal success was more so of a function of my malleability than distinction. I also think that there's something like I could reflect on that's really positive about that. I think that there's something really dehumanizing about mass popularity and being the most popular girl that like my sensitivity couldn't withstand, that I don't actually think I even want that. I do think my book was as popular adjacent as it could be, and I'm very proud of it. But I, as the author and promoter of it, was definitely made to feel kind of small at times when I was trying to get the message out there. That's why when people are like, tell me what it meant to them, as if it's cliche, I'm like, for the love of God, never stop telling authors what their work means to you. Anyone who's tired of hearing it is in the wrong job.
Yeah.
And I think this maybe even introduces like another layer to this, which is this idea of like being a content creator now. Like, it's a very weird space, because I was very much not a cool kid. I would classify myself as middle management. Like, had parts in a lot of groups, a lot of teams, a lot of projects, if you will. And yet I was never kind of like at that next stratosphere level. Some of the best advice I've ever received is twofold. 1, focus on your sleep. 2, make your home a sanctuary. And sometimes to do that, you have to invest in some items to make that happen. And one of the best investments that I have made recently is buying the Cozy Earth bamboo pajama set. When I tell you these are the best pajamas I have ever worn in my life, I'm not lying to you. I sometimes really struggle with pajamas because they're not comfortable. They make me really hot at night, and it's just, ugh, I don't like it. These have completely revolutionized the way I sleep, the way I enjoy my sleep and getting into bed and feeling comfortable and cozy. The fabric is so breathable. It is a soft stretch knit that just feels like heaven on your body. It's so lightweight, and I sleep so cool, which has been such a big deal for me. The other wild thing is their pajamas are made from the same exact material as their sheets. So if you buy the sheets and the pajamas, it's like the most incredible sleep of your life. So because I love it so much, if you go to cozyearth.com, use code NUANCE, NUANCE, for 40% off your order. I am telling you right now, go to cozyearth.com, use code NUANCE, and you are going to get 40% off your order. And if you use our code, please let them know that Nuance needed to send you. A better year starts with better sleep. Wrap yourself in Cozy Earth, and I cannot wait to hear how much you love these pajamas.
Yeah. Amanda, were you popular?
I was not. No, I moved a bunch growing up. So I very much related to your book as well. And I asked you that question because I've written a book too. And I think it's so fascinating to watch how your goalposts change, like as you become more successful. I remember when someone just reached out, and the idea of writing a book, I was like, I will die happy if I can just write a book.
Exactly.
And then you're like, no, I need it to be a top 5 publisher. And then you're like, I just would love to have it, be on a list. And then it's like the New York Times, you have all these things. Obviously my book did not do, as well as your book or anything, but I just think it's such a fascinating case study. I can't tell, like, if we add in the Taylor Swift of it all, one could argue it's never enough for her because she still is trying to fill the lunch tables, right, of her high school past. And I just think it's so fascinating how I think women specifically struggle with feeling good enough, and how whether you were popular enough in high school, even I think about my husband who wasn't popular but wasn't unpopular, but just like doesn't ever think about it as a formative experience at all, where I wonder if there is something about women specifically, and how are we all just trying to make up for not being popular enough? And then if you are popular, are you just trying to maintain that your whole life?
It is interesting, like, because part of what I wrote about in the chapter Be There in 5 was like how I think it benefited me in life that my parents were cool with bees. And like, I actually like have watched a lot of people really struggle outside of like the educational system, how to feel about themselves in life without grades. Like, I think a lot of people kind of rely on those outside vanity metrics to say how well you're doing. And then when you have to actually develop some self-confidence despite, some other institution saying you're doing well, like, it can be really tricky. And I think that like a lot of, the reason I'm self-employed or like will write a book or whatever, I'd actually say it's because I don't need excellence. And the popular adjacent thing, even though I joke about like really wanting us to do better, is also fine. I don't know. I do have a moving goalpost, but I do think that like in a creative or self-employed or like content creator type career, if your goal is like excellence and your goal is the A, you're never going to get it, because if you're, especially you're your own boss, you're never going to think like you're doing that well. So I don't know. It's like I feel two ways about it. I think the moving goalpost is like a bit sad for my own like gratitude and satisfaction, but I also think it's like a way to keep things interesting, if especially if you work for yourself.
Yeah.
And like sometimes the variables that define excellence like aren't really within your control.
No.
Like I'm not the biggest, well, I'm not really a fan at all. I don't read her books, but like even thinking about Colleen Hoover being around for like 11 years before her book spent like 90 weeks as a number one time. I'm like, how random is it? Like, I just think like, especially with like creative stuff, it's like relevance or stickiness with the public, like kind of just depends on a lot of factors you can't really even prevent, or like algorithms that we don't even control. And I actually think this is why I do worry that a lot of kids like want to become content creators, because I think it is like the most thankless
it is
game
not
to play.
for the faint of heart.
You have it's like your stuff doing well or not. Yeah, sometimes it's quality, but half the time it's just like not getting served to people. And like it's really I don't know. That's a whole other ball game, but I feel like somebody said to me the other day, like, well, kids even like go to college like when our kids are older? Like everyone's just going to want to be an influencer. And I like shuddered.
Yeah.
I was like, do you really think that?
A lot of kids apparently say that in school and stuff like that. Like that's what I've heard. It's crazy. I was going to say too, as we were thinking about all of this, one of our favorite things, Kate, is like you talk about nuance so well on your podcast, which is why it's long form and it's why Sam and I love it so much. And I'm wondering what is on your TikTok feed or social media feed these days. And I know you've been talking about the nuance of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, which we won't get into, but are there other things on your feed lately that you're like, this needs more nuance?
On my feeds is absolutely no nuance. I mean, always. It's so, everything's a binary of some kind. And it at once riles me up to a point of no return where I'm like really limiting my consumption during the workday and when I'm with my kid these days. Not to bring up Justin and Blake, but like even me I've been podcasting for 7 years. At a point, I kind of stopped doing those like hot button things because the passerbys were too stressful for me, that wanted you to not really approach anything with nuance. And I think the interesting thing that you have to be okay with is like nuance doesn't perform. Yeah. People just want like the hottest take, the wildest theory. And most people are going to take the bait to adopt that formula in their content for their own success, for their own personal gain, which makes sense. But like, I do think that as a person who also values what you guys do, the more I see people unable to do that, the more I want to do that with my content. And honestly, my feed now is just like a lot of really polarizing, doom scrolling, political content, some parenting stuff, some Baldoni Blake stuff. And it used to be kind of fun to be like, what's on your algorithm? But honestly, it almost feels not distinct anymore. If it's not Travis and Taylor, Blake and Justin, something being sold to me, or political stuff, I'm definitely not really seeing a lot of I used to like feel, do you guys feel like Amanda, last time we talked, it was an era of TikTok when like I got inspired, I got ideas, I learned stuff from people. I actually do feel like there's a true brain rotting element in the past year or so that I would argue wasn't there before, when it was like pretty exploratory.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I feel like there was just a lot more variety where it seems like everyone is just seeing what other creators are doing. I also get so much content on like how to be a creator. There isn't very much uniqueness. Like, I know this is a weird example, but I used to see, horse hooves being cleaned and these
like furrier talk.
Yes, like random
sheep
stuff.
sheep being sheared.
Yeah, and I don't know where. I mean, this is so funny. When I was deep into TikTok during the pandemic and I was like struggling with my mental health, I literally was like, I need to get a cow. Like that will solve my mental health problems, because I got so deep into like farm TikTok. But yeah, it's
people inspired by people living off the grid by telling you on the grid how off the grid they are.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then, that's become the whole, Tradwife pipeline. So it's Scary.
I actually have I'm curious from you guys. So like, okay, you're people that have like an education, training, and profession in like a very specific field.
Mm-hmm.
Is that confusing? Like, you can be a really good therapist, but not like have therapy related content perform, or you can like perform really well on the internet, but that's like disconnected from like your actual practice and work. Like, I'm always curious how like people that have influence or create content that are part of another trade like balance like success and time spent between the two.
We'll start here. It ties in with the popularity conversation.
Yeah.
And so what becomes really kind of odd for me is there is a part of me that sometimes where I'm like, I wish I didn't need this.
Mm-hmm.
But also for the entrepreneurial, like professional goals that I have, you have to have it now. And sometimes it does feel like it conflicts with like my own value system of information and therapy and social stuff. And the place where I found it showed that the most is when I first started posting, probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I was really trying to get into like the short form content. What I realized was those were the videos that soared. But what I started realizing about 2-ish years ago was that I felt like I was contributing to the problem, which I think the problem, exactly like you guys spoke about when Amanda was on your podcast and what Amanda and I are even speaking about now, is this idea of therapy speak. And I think there's a lot of us therapists that did a huge disservice by dumping out all of this terminology with zero explanation to what it actually means to live with some of these diagnoses day to day. And the fact that like a diagnosis is not meant to be a stop sign. It's meant to be a solution.
Yeah.
If you find out, oh, I have anxiety or I have depression or I have bipolar or I have an addiction or something like that, right? That is not meant to now be a reason why you can't live life. It's meant to be, well, now we know how to help you live life the way you want to, and we know what tools you need, and we know what skills you need in order to live a life that is fulfilling to you. And that simply because you have anxiety doesn't mean you can't be social, or that because you have depression doesn't mean like we now can't have any expectations for you to get up and live your life. And that is kind of shockingly controversial to say those things.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, is because we were so black and white, all or nothing thinking with therapy content for so long that I had to move to long form content where I was adding more nuance and explanation and understanding to things, because I realized that that was the only form of content that felt like it could align with not only my professional values, but my personal values. And that really was where, like, you know, as Amanda and I were becoming friends and we started talking about things, that's really kind of how this podcast was born, was this recognition that even though we knew this was not the key to like virality in terms of content, right? But like we both felt it was necessary.
It was like the key to our souls being at peace at night.
Yeah. And kind of saying, you know, like, okay, maybe I'm sacrificing like huge views and like astronomical growth because I can get there. Like I know what I can say and do to achieve that, but to also sit with like, this is how I've had to make peace with living this content creator life while also feeling like I'm living up to my values as a therapist.
That's so interesting and so true. I feel like there also social media teaches you that just like there's such thing as like a bad therapist or like an unethical, like, you know what I mean? It's almost been enlightening to be like, this is kind of fucked up. And like, maybe, I don't know. Do you guys remember there was this one like infamous, maybe a year or two ago, therapist that scripted out how to end a friendship. And she was, it was the worst. I was like, if anybody said this to me, I would, like, this is the cruelest way you could treat another human being, is with this excess scripted therapy speak that's like technically above board, but like so
dehumanizing,
inhumane. Yeah. I appreciate that you guys even like can acknowledge that and not ride the wave as much as you try to correct for it, because you probably aren't going to be rewarded for it materially, but in your soul, at least that sits well with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really interesting too is I kind of came up as I was building my business, right? Like I kind of came up in early Instagram days of like
Mm-hmm.
2019 was kind of when I got on Instagram, and it was still like pretty novel to be a therapist on Instagram and just share things. And I really built my whole business around it. And then I got pregnant and I had such severe illness when I was pregnant. I was basically like incapacitated for almost the whole
Mm-hmm.
time. And I had this really insane nausea that I couldn't look at screens. So I
Oof.
couldn't like look at a phone. I couldn't and I went from being someone who in retrospect I was so hyper vigilant about how much I was online, making sure I had every
Mm-hmm.
caveat, making sure I was above board, and then nothing. And I had to actually totally reformulate how my business was supported
Oh,
because it
interesting.
changed so much. And I really had to shift from having a business that was connected with its success on social media. It was a really big shift that had to happen.
Yeah. Do you guys read Ethan Slater's ex-wife's
Yes.
article
Yes.
about that? Was confusing to me about like she has a very intense desire to live a private life and thinks that's essential to her
Yeah.
practice. But I don't that's not everybody's philosophy,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately
Mm-mm.
like you have to market, you're still a business, you have to market yourself, you
Well,
still have to support yourself.
I also think like with that line, I think that's great. Like if that's how she
Mhm.
feels, she
Yeah.
like go for it. But I have also found there is a shift happening, and I think we could probably do like a whole other episode about this. I have found that millennial aged clients of mine, and I think even more so the Gen Z aged clients, have felt safer seeing my content beforehand,
Yep.
getting kind of a feel for who I am, my style, my vibe, all of that. And they then feel comfortable like reaching out, getting on my wait list, getting an appointment, like the whole thing. And so what I do to kind of combat that is in my intake sessions, I say, look, I have a social media presence and you can follow me. I'm totally fine with that. I have no problems with that. But also you can unfollow me. Like
Yeah.
if it like, because I think something, and this is a fine line that I walk, like I still post things about my life.
Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
post things about my family. I still talk about, I share my opinion on things. I, share things that I find funny, whatever. And I said, I think sometimes there's some people that struggle to see that from their therapist. And that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Like
Mhm.
you don't have to engage with that. But also I actually find like most of them kind of like it. They like to know that I'm a person that lives a life and has interests in things and I think there is a shift that dynamic in that relationship is becoming more casual.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
obviously it's boundaried and you have ethics and those sorts of things, and my ethics with them is I don't DM, I don't comment back, and I don't
Mm.
follow back if you're my client, and I
Mm-hmm.
get that out of the way like right at the start. um but I also think it doesn't have to be as rigid as it once was.
That's a totally millennial thing too, though. I think that like the idea that to be professional means to be personally anonymous is something that
Yeah,
like we don't
we don't
jive
do
with.
well with.
And like I always have wanted to befriend my coworkers or have a personal relationship with people I work with. Like, yeah, that being like bad or unprofessional or whatever has always been kind of weird. And I'm with you. When I read Ethan Slater's wife's article, I was like, that's interesting, an interesting way to think about it. But yeah, before I go to a new therapist and tell them my life story and pay for the session and realize we don't vibe, I wish I could just gauge
Yeah.
your vibe ahead of time.
Yeah.
I don't know, Amanda, did anything come up for
Yeah,
you?
I mean, I think it's what you said. I think there's different things for different people, and
Yeah.
I think that is a very, for lack of a better word, old school approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think some people like that, and that works for them. I think if you deal with people who have more severe mental health issues, that sometimes is an advantage. Or if you work in like, I know she had said that I think she used to work in higher levels of care and things like that. Like that's
Yeah. Right.
appropriate. But I also think there's this,
Yeah.
right? Like if we're talking about the nuance, there is just this insanely interesting thing of Sam and I talk a lot about have we overcorrected, where that was the blank
Yeah.
slate. And now you
Mm.
have therapists that are like cosplaying being a therapist on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen any of those videos
Mm.
where
Oh, yes, I
people write
have.
like they play out what they say, they play out what their therapist says. That is for me, I'm like, have we overcorrected? I can't imagine like that people Yeah, it just drives me crazy because I'm just like, I imagine myself as a client and being like, how awkward is it to see your client sharing about what you said? Or I've seen things where therapists video themselves talking in session,
I know I don't like
even if
that.
it's not right. They don't share what the client
Oh.
said, but you can tell. And I'm just like, this is like, I've seen even people put it in their consent forms of like, I may use some of
Wow.
what you said in my content.
I feel similar about like online parenting stuff. Like,
Mm.
how do I talk about my experience as a mother with transparency without talking about my kids?
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
how do I talk about like my expertise as a therapist without talking about my clients? Like,
Right.
they're intertwined, but like you also, yeah, have a right to like speak about your identity and expertise and experiences. And yeah, it's kind of confusing in general, I think, with the internet. And I'm always wondering like if I'll do like a full 180 boomerang
Mhm.
at some point and just like want to hide. Because I think in our careers, like we're kind of forced to be public facing.
Yeah.
But like Amanda experienced, there are a lot of things that happen in life that make it unsustainable or you can't be public facing. And yeah, I think it's just like kind of an interesting era for us all to like navigate as like consumers and people, but as like professionals. I think the online part of it all is endlessly confusing and will continue to be. And like we're just guinea pigs for it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day because I wrote something about motherhood, and I talk a lot about, how I didn't know if I wanted to have kids, and I know you've talked about that a lot too, Kate, and I kind of was trying to explain because I think I'm still reconciling who I was before and who I am now and bridging that gap. And I used a photo with like the back of my daughter like bending down, like playing outside. And someone wrote like, I really like your content, but it's just really disappointing that you would use your child for content. And I was just like, I was so triggered. I had to have like a whole conversation with Sam about it, whether I was
Your
going
kid's
to
probably in a full like toddlers and tiaras dance troupe in a 2-piece at 5 years. Like, relax. It's fine.
Please miss me with this feedback, but thank you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think that's such a good example of like, we're not able to see nuance. We're not able to see, we see something of like, kids online bad. Everyone is bad. Who does it? And then we're policing each other about it versus like there is a way to do it. And people have different values and people have different choices around what they feel comfortable about. And just because someone does something different doesn't mean like you're wrong either.
I know. I kind of am not as like intense about some people with that because I think like this is the world we live in now and we have to navigate it the best we can. And there's like a version of the internet where like you could also kind of argue everyone's so online, no one's online. Like,
yeah. Oh, I love that.
That is so
I
true.
just don't. It's like there's so many kids and people and families and like everything, and it's like I just think that like this is the world, and we're all going to be part of this digital world and cloud in some way, and it's like so hard to. I don't know. It's the privacy conversation is confusing, and I'm like not as strict as some people on it, which isn't necessarily popular, but yeah, people definitely have hot takes that are hard to manage because I don't think any of us know what's best. Like what really, I don't know, matters ultimately. But we've seen such like, bad examples with like Ruby Frankie and Mika Stauffer and people like that. It's obviously, I think people go to the extremes for a reason. I think like online communities shouldn't be like invalidated as like something that's completely unpersonal. I really do think that like a big part of like my journey with parenting is like my conversations about if I wanted to be a mom, the childless millennial stuff, and a lot of like conversations and encouragement from my audience and like actually engaging with people. And when I announced that I had my baby or whatever, I definitely got some comments being like, congrats on your newborn, but they're entitled to their privacy. And I'm just like, listen, who can tell a newborn apart? His face is mush. Like I think it's relax. This is where I'm like, per the sleepover conversation, I'm like, I think that like intensity about protection and stuff can kind of like lose the plot or be a little unrealistic. Like I could never tell a newborn apart in my life as badly as I tried. But if you want to put an emoji over their face, it's fine. I just like people feel I think parenting stuff's really hard because people feel so strongly, and you never know if like this people that feel strongly represent reality, or if they're just being presented to you because of how algorithms prioritize extremities, when there could be a lot of people in the middle somewhere, you know?
Oh yeah.
Well, I also, and this is going to be a controversial take, but let's go. I also think people forget paranoia is real.
Oh,
And there is such a thing where the things that you are afraid of are unfounded,
Hmm.
right? Like, obviously,
Yeah.
maybe like statistically things do happen, but I think people forget that it is very easy for anxiety to drift into that realm, and that there is such a thing as being too cautious, and there is such a thing as being like too prepared.
Yeah.
And I do think a lot of conversation around kid stuff now veers into that. And it's the pendulum swing, right? Like our parents, they're like, come home eventually, you know, like we'll see
Yeah.
you tonight when it's dark. And so now I think we went all the way the other way to like, I'm going to protect my kid and I'm going to do the things that my parents didn't do and I'm going to do it perfectly and blah, 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 blah. And then it still doesn't work because reality is in the middle. And the human,
Right.
like the human experience is inherently messy no matter what you do. And it's meant to be because it's designed that way so that we can actually build that resilience and that we can build emotional intelligence within that.
Parenting stuff online does cause so much paranoia.
Paranoia.
I didn't really, you're right. It's like we've branded responsible parenting and hypervigilance and like
Yes.
care for things that actually at a point are paranoia and
harmful.
are us, the anxious generation, literally breeding a more anxious generation.
Yes.
I remember because I struggle a lot with insomnia. So I did shifts with my husband. So my daughter slept in a room by herself like the whole time. She was in the NICU, so she came home with a schedule. So we just were like, it's
Yeah.
fine. And that's, you know, we had a monitor, we did it. But this is like the first time I've said that out loud because I was like so afraid of being destroyed over the fact that I didn't sleep with her next to me in my bed.
Oh.
But it is like that online culture
Yeah.
of we're also like policing other people, right? For other people. Like we're defending other people's kids for the kid.
Oh my gosh. Though that's so interesting. Yeah, I have so many things I could and would have said that I've kept to myself.
Probably wise.
It's like it's as if I just think that it's kind of sad how it's like I think the variability of experiences within motherhood and how unsupported people can feel is why we fight. But I hate that the fighting is at the expense of people sharing when it's like an experience marked by a lot of invisibility, and that's part of the frustration. But yeah, I actually don't remember if I cut this out of a podcast episode or not. But even people in my own life thought it was crazy. My philosophy was like, I don't believe in the whole house being tired.
Yeah.
So we didn't both get up with the baby. One of us did, and then one person was always well rested. And I said that somewhere, and somebody was like, if my man didn't wake up when I was breastfeeding, and I was just like, I don't feel that way. I just don't feel that strongly, and I don't think everybody has to. But then, like in a moment of weakness, if I came across commentary like that, I'd probably look at my husband and be like seething, even though I don't really feel that way.
Yep.
Like, are you bad? Are you a bad partner? It's like we're letting other people like code and assign value to things that we like don't even actually feel that strongly about.
Yeah.
Well, it makes us feel that we're missing something.
Yeah.
Like it then makes us feel paranoid where you're like, oh, like, am I like being taken advantage of by my husband because I told him to sleep and I'll get up tonight, you know?
Right.
Like now I think the nuance there is, are you and your partner feeling equitable in whatever decision that you're choosing?
Yeah.
But people don't want to have that conversation because they're like, well, there is a right way and there is a wrong way because that's how I did it. And the way I did it was the right way. So you're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, it's kind of, I really do think that there's a lot of overthinking that can happen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, does it feel fine? Because like sometimes things like those way things are going like feels fine and you're in your groove, but then like on principle, you can overthink it or something, you know? And I don't know. I don't get served a lot of parenting content anymore. I try to start consuming less of it because I've realized like it was a lot of overthinking. And I don't know if that's like the wrong term to say, but it's like putting ideas in my head that I never had, that I didn't need. It was more stuff I don't need to think about.
Kate, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And
I feel like I hijacked the
no,
This is what we wanted, Kate.
we wanted to
exactly
make
what we
sure
wanted.
that we talked about your book enough because we are so
yeah,
honored
yeah.
that you came on. So that was why
Oh,
we were
yeah.
very honed in on that conversation.
Oh, no. I mean, I think ultimately the inconclusive thing is like we built these platforms that we didn't understand the implications of,
No.
and that we're still experiencing the consequences and implications of. And I think there's just a lot of swirling, thoughts and feelings you can have about, designing a life that's meant to just be perceived versus just like actually being a person that's living a life and your profession. And I think it's nice to talk to people like you guys that are doing a little bit of both.
Where can people find you if they don't know, and tell us more about if you have any other projects going on?
Yeah, you can find one in the Millennial wherever books are sold. It's now available in paperback.
Woo!
And you can find me on Instagram at Kate Kennedy, and my podcast is called Be There in 5. And right now I'm just trying to, enjoy and refine my day job. Nothing else big on the horizon.